Sup, Chaos72 here for another Chaos Tower review. Today taking a look at Gunbir-O. Not sure how it's spelled. I'm probably gonna butcher the name in the video title, but is what it is. It's weird when you're working with subs versus I think their official names, etc., etc., and when you romanize a name out of kanji and whatever to English romanization. So Go-Onger released things a little weird, as in they did not release, only 2 mecha got 1 box release, meaning only 2 mecha came complete. You'd only needed to buy the one thing to get all the pieces. Go-Onger did a weird thing where you would buy the individual pieces, but this also guaranteed you that you got the engine souls with each one, because Engine-O and Carrigator did not come with the other 2 engines for some of its limbs, whereas the ones that came in the individual boxes always came with their engine soul. So kind of a give and take, but I don't think they've ever done this sort of gimmick again when it comes to Megazords, but then again, no other Megazords since then. I was about to say they did it in Tokyo, but they did release Diesel-O as an all-in-one box. So, let's get into the review. Before we get into Carrigator, I'm going to look at these guys first, because I will show off their little combination with Engine-O. And let's take a look numerically with Birca, who I thought was going to be my favorite engine going into Go-Onger, because my favorite RPM range is Ziggy, of course. But well, he's one of the few I didn't hate any of the engines. He was the most interesting because he just had a weird thing with French, which seems to be a common thing in Toku, since Orin from Gaim, who is a green armored character, is obsessed with French. Weird. Anyway, and like I said, well, not like I said, but since these came in boxes, and again, all these are used, does come with his engine soul. So just slam it into there. And you have to open up the wheels. And one complaint I've seen, and I kind of agree, with Birca is that here's the animal, and here's the vehicle. He is not the vehicle, whereas, say, Gunpherd over here is clearly a wolf, dog, something, mixed with a vehicle, whereas Birca here is clearly just riding a vehicle. So, not sure how they could have done that with this animal, but, you know, since this was one of the first toys to come out, they could have definitely designed this better and then designed some of the other bits and bobs a little bit better. Well, around the redesign, but hey, it works. It does what it needs to do. And it rolls, and the buttons to activate these sounds are here. It says something like go on. They all say go on, besides Engine Dice Shogun over there. Al dente, amigo, etc., etc. Every catchphrase you would expect if you've watched Go-Onger. And he does spin. He can do the tail spin. So let's get him out of the way. Actually, we'll show him with combination. So let's pull out Engine Dice Shogun here. And Birca did come over here. So you're going to have to kind of half transform this back, but then do that. And to transform him into arm mode, take Birca, split his back leg apart, and put it like this, kind of create a fist of sorts. Spin him around, and then spin the dorsal fin around. So here's your arm, and you plug it in. And it's an arm. It's an arm. About as much posability as you expect. So we'll keep him aside like that, and we'll move this aside. So let's take a look at Gunpherd, or Gunbir-O, depending on if you go by how he pronounces it to how it's spelt. And he is a police wolf cruiser thing. And his engine soul is, you pull that, and there's his engine soul. And not knocking the seller, but since everything else is in great condition, but since these are somewhat older electronics, even though this came out like 08, 09, something along those lines, this engine sole is a bit going dead, but I didn't plan them for the sounds. It's just nice that I got all the engine soles with each mech. So he rolls, doesn't really do much, but his arm mode does a little cocking motion because he becomes a gun. And you take this, I believe it's officially this way, to create a kind of scope. And then take Engine No or Engine Daishogun, depending on which one you decide to have. Fold up the same, and I'm just keeping this for G6 formation. And you plug him in on this side. And as you'd expect, he does the pew-pews. And keep in mind, if yours has somewhat weaker joints, would not recommend keeping the engine soles in. But since I'm not moving mine around, I keep them in, and probably not a good idea, but he will stay together. But if yours has somewhat looser joints, that may be something to keep in mind. And to also keep the batteries out of these, since these do not have an on and off switch. And now we have Carrigator. Probably one of my favorite engines, just because he's just kind of does his own thing for a bit, and then he enlightens everyone to things going on, since he is of the endangered giant race on Engine. Is it Machine World or Engine World? Anyway, and as I'm just demonstrating, he can kind of carry these two specifically. There's little indents in this top panel up here. These top panels up here to keep them in place and from rolling off wildly. But if you don't carry them, and he also has a little pivot here. But the full-on way to have him is to have all this flush against the surface. So, and his engine sole is in his mouth, as you would expect. Engine sole number 6. And if you kind of close it a little bit, you can make him look like he's sticking out his tongue, which is kind of funny. But his jaw does lock up for you to put it in. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from just falling out, and I'll show you another thing coming in. We get into robot mode, which will start. So, to start, split him apart. Yes, he is unfortunately the mule piece, and take up the helmet. And if you buy this guy, and this stops being relevant as of G9, but since this is also Gunbir-O's head piece, make sure this is included in the eBay, or wherever you decide to buy it. And unfortunately, Carrigator is the obligatory shoe parts, which is kind of how this is right now, but we'll get into the transformation. So split this, and then fold these out and keep these down, and then fold these little bits out for heel spurs. Then it'll stand tall and proud. Let me just okay, there we go. Then you want to take this, clamp it down, turn these around, then fold this down. And one thing is, if you're not careful, trying to see if I can get this to show up. So if you open the mouth a little bit, the engine sole can fall right out. So that's a bit of an issue, but oh well. Kind of take it and leave it. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to balance. And then just take the arms, the same place you'd put them on Engine O is the arm they go on Gunbir-O. And it's the same transformations. Oh, and how to get his engine soul is you press on these gas tanks. Then he is a tiny little head, and this is kind of why you need the helmet, because without it, you kind of lose his head a bit. So, this is Gunbir-O. Fairly nice looking Megazord, and in the States known as the Valve Max, since car references were needed. And to be fair, Gunbir-O probably wouldn't have done so well here in the States. And like typical Sentai Mecha, he only has this, and he's known for having loose joints, but he can kind of do a, hey guy, what's up? And he can kind of have an elbow shoulder shrug of, hmm? So that is Gunbir-O. And no real major issues, but he's got some interesting feet, which might be a turnoff for some people, but he unfortunately is the mule piece, but he is a solid collection. He is a solid addition to the collection. So even if you don't plan on getting G9, 12, or going to G6, he is a solid representation for Go-Onger. So let's get into G6 formation. And you're just going to want to essentially turn him back into vehicle. Well, the two halves I showed you earlier. And this half is pretty much done, besides just opening up the panels back here. And then, don't stick your tongue out now. Put him back, and I found the best way this works is if you have him back in his alligator half. Fold this up, open these, and then fold this back to give the back some support so it's not bending over. And there you have your booties. And I'll fold these down to show you what we're going to do. And then you're just going to leave these guys the way they are. Centralize the camera here. So you're going to take Engine-O, or Engine Daishogun, fold in his little feet. And like I said, Carrigator essentially becomes the obligatory shoe piece that every combination of Sentai gets. And you're just going to want to clip him into these around the outside of his foot and this little bar on the other side of his foot. And you'll know you have it when it doesn't fall off. And this heel helps, trust me. And then plug it in on this arm. Plug it in on this arm. And then this piece is the G6 helmet. Take this off. If you want, you can put it back where it was. And then attach the helmet. And that is G6. He's getting big. He is getting big. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.